Well, welcome to 2022 and goodbye 2021. Hope we don't see your likes again. However, we do have some positives that came out of 2021. I'll be looking at some of those in the next days and weeks ahead. We're going to start with music. My top 10, as I've said to some people on Facebook, I'm going to divide it into two categories: physical media 5 and digital 5, simply because there's so much now in the digital realm that you get high res, high quality, and it doesn't see physical release, or if it does, it's a record store day exclusive, where there's only 3,000 Coke bottle vinyl coloured ones in one store in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. So 5 physical, 5 digital, couple of honourable mentions on each. Let's crack on. So let's start with the physical media. A couple of honourables. We'll start with let's see, Adam Fraser. Adam Fraser's first album, as it's called, Introducing, but he's certainly no newcomer to music. He is the drummer for Duran Jones and the Indications, a great soul band who also put out a cool album this year, but this is his first solo record. A bit lazy to use very similar picture there, but there he is in more of a barbershop look. If you like classic soul, so a bit of Motown, bit of Stax, a lot of Curtis Mayfield, especially in the vocals, and production wise a lot of kind of gambling huff Philly sound, 70s more than 60s. Definitely try. This is a solid debut. He's still with Duran Jones, but I hope he continues to make more of his own music, because this is a terrific start. One that's appearing at the top of a lot of lists, but I think it even made it to my top 5, but I still like it, hence honourable mention: Dry Cleaning, New Long Leg. Some people think this is an album full of nonsense lyrics and non sequiturs. To me, it's not so much a stream of consciousness as it's the way we all think, just put into, the things that we often think and don't say, or the things that we say that are too mundane to say, but strung into songs with a kind of punky musical background. So for example, on the track John Wick, which has nothing to do with the film John Wick, she complains that the Antiques Roadshow ain't what it used to be, because they just try and rattle through the valuations these days instead of giving you the history behind the objects. It's a fabulously park life like delivery from the lead vocalist. I'm terrible, sorry, I can't remember her name. I'll be in here somewhere, but again, it's only an honourable, so I ain't going to look. If you like Patti Smith when she's more spoken word, give it a shot. I had a great time with it. I don't know how they keep that going for a whole career, but I had a great time with it. Somebody who usually makes my top 10, but he's not. You might if I was only taking physical media into account. Joe Bonamassa, Time Clocks. This is Joe's 417th album, not counting side projects, but in lockdown he's perhaps been listening to more diverse records, because it's certainly not as bluesy as normal. There aren't as many guitar histrionics as normal. And Joe is a little bit more mellow. There's a piano ballad, there's a bit more prog, there's not as much soloing in general as you'd get from a Bonamassa album. I still think it's worthwhile listening to for anybody who likes Joe's music, because he's developing into a world-class songwriter, singer, and someone who knows how to put together a different kind of album that isn't just these are the albums that I like. So, he's got some country licks in here. He's got stuff that would sound like not out of place on a Buck Owens album. you know. He's got stuff that sounds Jethro Tull-like. So this is a more diverse Joe Bonamassa record, and I hope it signals a different direction for moving forward, because as much as I love him, and I've been seeing Joe since 2005 when he played the Glasgow Ferry. Now he's playing, you know, Royal Albert Hall and Music City Radio Hall and places. When I first saw Joe, there was about 20 of us there, so I've been a long time fan. But he's so diverse that I'm ready for something new, and if this is the start of that, I'm sure he'll be back in the top 5 before we know it. Speaking of top 5, I made a promise to a good buddy of mine, my musical guru, Mr. Dave Kaufman, that there would be something jazz on my list. And it's jazz, but it's jazz, how to put it, jazz tangential? Let's go with that. It's on impulse, so it's jazzy. It's Blake Mills and Pino Palladino with their record Notes with Attachments, which is a perfect name for it once you hear the record. If you don't recognise the names, then you bloody well should. Pino Palladino is John Entwistle's replacement at The Who. He's been playing for about 45 years professionally. Started with like Gary Newman, that kind of scene. But he's played with Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, Ed Sheeran. He was on 2 of Robbie Robertson's last albums. 9 Inch Nails, Simon and Garfunkel used him on the Old Friends tour. Cindy, if you're watching, he is on, and I made a note of this just for you, he plays on Harry Styles' album Fine Line. He plays bass on Watermelon Sugar and She, which I'm presuming isn't She Made Me the Face I Can't Forget, but so Pino is a long time sideman, a bit like a Steve Gadd or something, who has never had his own day in the sun, and this is his first solo album in his 60s. I say solo, but he's joined by Mr. Blake Mills, who's a long time hero of mine. Blake has produced and worked with Fiona Apple, Perfume Genius. He's on Dylan's last album, Rough and Rowdy Ways, the Alabama Shakes, and he's also had time to Phoebe Bridgers. He's also had time to make about 5 or 6 solo records in his own name, which are fantastic. Blake can play anything with strings on it. Literally, he's a phenomenon. Should be a household name if it was 30, 40 years ago. It would be, but as it is, he ain't. What I like about this is it's not a chance for either Pino on bass or for Blake on guitar and sitar and about everything with strings on it to say, hey, I'm gonna show off here. It's notes with attachments, so it's not improv, but they start with a theme or a melody and just see where it takes them. And they are so proficient that it takes you different places, some wonderful places, but it's not just pure jazz as the cover kind of makes it look. It takes you to Cuba, takes you to South America, takes you to Africa, takes you to pure rock at times. There's a little bit of folk, there's a little bit of Blake Mills' own kind of sound in there. Not anything from Pino's own punkier early days, really, but there's a lot of great playing from everybody involved, as you can imagine. What I like about Blake is that he doesn't steal the scene, even though he is one of the best guitar players in the world. He never chews the scenery, as it were. He always lets the music speak for itself. So that is my number 5 album of the year, Blake Mills, but mostly Pino Palladino from Wales, believe it or not, with a name like that. Notes with Attachment, number 5. Number 4. So after, C, S and N, Wooden Ships on the Water, very free. Easy, you know the way it's supposed to be. Silver people on the shoreline, let us be. Talking about the new album from Crosby. So this is David Crosby's 5th album since 2014, after only releasing 4 albums in the 40 years preceding it. He's finally accepted that Crosby, Stills and Nash are no more. And good, because he has made some of the best music of his career, maybe the best music of his career, certainly the most consistent in the last 7 years, despite the fact that he's now 80. This is called For Free, and includes a cover of the Joni Mitchell classic, also covered this year by Lana Del Rey, great cover as well. But Cros has more of a link to it, because he obviously dated Joni Mitchell when she first moved to LA, and also produced her first records, the Song to a Seagull. I have rung the bell for Cros for a long time, because he's a personal hero of mine, but also a musical hero. I just adore the man, absolutely adore him. And what I've said is, if you're looking for Crosby, Stills and Nash, don't buy these albums, because none of these sounds like Crosby, Stills and Nash. If you're looking for something a bit more Steely Dan-ish, buy these albums, because that's what they sound like. There's a cleanness, there's a freshness, there's a great production value to every single one of them, and it's a great run. Every one of these albums is fantastic. 2014's Cros, Sky Trails, Here If You Listen, Lighthouse, and then For Free. This is the same cover as the 2014 Cros, but this is that was a photo. This obviously being a painting, painted by Joan Baez, no less. She could be on here, that's a shame, missed opportunity. But speaking of people who are on here, Michael McDonald's on the opening track, River Rise. Michael McDonald, who his voice goes through me sometimes, but when he's just doing backing vocals, I can always handle him, you know, like Red Like the Wind and Peg. Yeah, but when he sings like What a Fool Believes, but now he's older and more mature, his voice is not so annoying. Crosby's voice is just, if you told me this was recorded in 1982 for Daylight Again, I'd believe it vocally. You know, the music doesn't sound like CSN. But yeah, this is stunning. His son, his illegitimate son, who Crosby didn't know about, James Raymond, produces and writes a lot of this. They only became aware of each other when Crosby was in his 50s, and they've worked together ever since. It's quite a lovely story, really. And James is one of the main kind of push factors in Crosby becoming a solo artist, and it always has been since 1971. But if you're looking for the Crosby of If I Could Only Remember My Name, don't look here. This is Steely Dan-like, as I said. In fact, Donald Fagen is on and I think co-writes Rodriguez for a Night. So there you go. I've been saying for all these years these are like Steely Dan, and then Donald Fagen shows up to tell me I'm right. So, listen to me, I know what I'm talking about. That was number 4, David Crosby's For Free. Number 3 then is, this is a hard one, For Those I Love. It's by David Balfe, but it is under the name, the band name and the album name of For Those I Love. And it's a tribute to his best friend Paul Curran, a poet and bandmate of his, in a kind of punk collective called Burnt Out in Dublin, who killed himself in 2019, I think it was. And David Balfe had already started on 1 or 2 of the tracks, and when Paul killed himself, he started all over again and decided to make this as a tribute to Paul. All songs written, recorded and mixed by David Balfe in his ma's shed and his bedroom, literally. And there is Happier Times Before the Dark Days. It's an album about grief. It's an album about the suicide of his friend, but also his feelings about it and how his love will never, I mean, literally it's on there, I have a love and it never fades. It's not just a dark, depressing album though. What it does is it takes the relationship they had, and it was platonic, I don't mean romantic relationship, it takes that and it takes you right back to the start of it, where they'd be listening to, say, dubstep, and it throws a little bit of that in, and then it takes recordings that he had saved in his mobile or that they'd shared over Snapchat or whatever, and he dubs those on top of him talking about his dead friend. It's an extremely difficult listen at times, but very rewarding, and if you experience grief, this will hit close to home, but I think it's also a very cathartic exercise because it is also about acceptance. It also goes to other places, like the track Top Scheme being about the way that poorer people are left in schemes, projects as I guess they call them in America, and just kind of left to rot, without any real way out of it, and all they had was each other, their friendship, music and poetry that cost nothing. Wow, it's a tough listen, but it's a rewarding listen. It'll take you all over the place musically, but vocally it's done as a kind of talking record, which some people have said is like the Streets, but Mike Skinner always sounded to me fake. I think you are really fit, but my gosh, don't you know? No. His Dublin accent, I think he's from just outside Dublin, but his Dublin accent is so lyrical in its sound that it gives it a musicality anyway. So it doesn't need to be sung, it's more powerful to be said, and by God, there are moments in this where you will want to pause it and just take a moment and go. But again, cathartic. Number 3, For Those I Love by For Those I Love. I don't know how you follow this up, just need to do another project I guess, because what do you do, wait for more grief to hit? Well, I suppose it works for Adele, doesn't it? I think that woman just has divorces so she can make a new record every few years. So that was the number 3. So number 2, number 2 is an annoying one because it reminds me of how old I am. But it's fantastic. It's one of the best rock albums I've heard in years. And it's the band Geese. And the album is called Projector. Love that cover, absolutely adore that cover. That is spooky but brilliant. Now Geese, Brooklyn band, and they were all in high school when this was recorded, not college or anything like that, high school, secondary as we'd call it here. And they decided to make an album before they all went off to college, and may not see each other again, or might see each other, but we know how these things go. Unfortunately, they were signed before that all happened, with their demo that they sent in. Here they are here, they're annoyingly young, prodigious talents. This has been compared by some to the early 2000s revival of the kind of 70s guitar art rock scene of like Talking Heads. So you're talking like, say the Strokes, and bands like that who came out in the early 2000s. Even some people said the White Stripes, which I don't hear at all. To me, the best comparison to make for this is, imagine Mick Jagger, a young Mick Jagger, fronting Television. Now, to me, that sounds like one of the best bands going, and this, to me, despite the fact they're annoyingly young and I'm very old, is one of the best bands going. Geese. There's a track on here called Fantasies / Survival, and wow, it's danceable, it's fun, and then when you think you've got the hang of it, oh wow, the time signature is completely changed and you're lost. There are tracks on here. Their kind of breakout hit was called Disco. It wasn't even much of a hit, but it was their breakout track. I don't think that's representative of them, because the guitar sound, as I said, is more television. So if you can imagine the dual guitars of Tom Verlaine and Richard Lloyd from television, that's kind of what you get here. A bit of this kind of staccato sound of Mark Moon and Johnny Jewel from television. Also a bit of Wilco Johnson, that kind of sound. I want to give a shout out to the band members, because again, new band, so I think it's only fair. Cameron Winter is on vocals. He's phenomenal. He just sounds like a young Mick Jagger, but having fun. Foster Hudson and Gus Green. Gus Green, that's a great name, isn't it? Gus Green on guitars. Max Besson on drums, and Dominic DiGesu is on bass. And I believe that Cameron Winter, the Jagger-like vocalist, also plays keyboards, so unlike Mick, he doesn't just prance around and sometimes pretend he can play harmonica. I think this is one of the best debut albums that I've heard in a long time. This is very special. What's even more special is Geese are playing Glasgow next month, and Paul, James, Kerr, if you are watching, we're going to that gig. Happy Christmas. Number 2, Geese with the album Projector. My number 1 record, so special, if you're ready, is, this is a big one, so I had to lift it up there. Number 1 record is Phil Collins. It's from Rough Trade, and if you've never bought from Rough Trade before, this is how they ship vinyl, and you can guess the 7-inch or the album. You can see a little bit of Patti Smith or whatever. But I owe Dave Kaufman another shout out here, because about 2 months ago, I said, I posted a link on Facebook and said, isn't it too early for us all to post our best of the year lists? Rough Trade have just done it, and it's November the 5th, and Dave said, in his Canadian accent, probably because, being Canadian, he said, hey there, hosehead, I don't think you should be saying that and all, because, these things are just great to get people listening, and it's all about the music, like, hoser, take off, or something to that effect. Sorry, Dave. But this is, I'm excited, my number 1 album of the year, The Mutkar's Afrique Victime. Now, Rough Trade were selling this as a limited edition of 3,000. So I owe Dave, because when we were having that discussion, I just clicked on Rough Trade to see what made their list. And on that very day, they listed a limited edition of 300 that were signed by the whole band. Yeah, you see that? There's a window up there. And the first 25 orders, if I can find it, the first 25 orders come with a flexi disc of the title track. Flexi disc, remember them? Isn't that cool? So, because of me being stuck in the mud and saying, "Grr, it's too early for end of the year," I ended up with this. And this, bizarrely, $21.99. The version with no signatures, no flexi, but with purple vinyl. Who gives that? $24.99. I don't want purple vinyl. It doesn't make the record sound any better. But this one, it's got a cool flexi, signed by the whole band. So yeah, I mean that's real treasure, that. Now, if you have not heard of Mdou Mokhtar, his real name is Mohamedou Souleymane. He's from the Niger, and he's one of the Tuaregs, who are desert people. They forget my map of Africa from the album cover. The Tuareg or Tuareg, they aren't in one place. They kind of live all the way down this part of Africa, kind of nomadic, right across the Sahara, basically the Sahara dwellers. Mdou discovered music through when internet really first came to the Niger. He discovered Eddie Van Halen via YouTube, and he had a guitar, a very, basic guitar that he worked on, and wanted to be like Eddie Van Halen. His parents tried to talk him out of playing, this horrible Western rock music noise. But what he did is he melded Afrobeats and what we think of as African rhythms and whatnot. So his band are mostly kind of African Afrobeat musicians, but he adds. Now it's been compared a lot to. People say, again, he started with Eddie Van Halen. Some people say the African Jimi Hendrix. To me, the big influence here is Prince. Biggest of all. He desperately wants to be Prince. From the Purple motif to the fact that he covered Purple Rain in 2015, and in the language of the Tuareg people, there's no word for purple. So the translation came out as the rain which is red with a bit of blue in it. That's a true story, 2015. When he started out, they didn't have a way of transferring MP3s and whatnot, with the internet being so bad and whatnot in Africa. So his music was transferred from person to person via memory cards in mobile phones, just little Nokias and things. So wonderfully, this album, when it was released, came in an edition that was in an old Nokia as well, which I think is really, really cool and pays homage to his roots. It's been a breakout album for him, and I'm very glad, because Dave introduced me to Mdou. I'm sure I would have picked up on with the amount of end of year lists that he's showing up in, comparing him to some of my guitar heroes, but it was Dave that opened the door for me, so thank you, Dave, and I'm terribly sorry about that impression of you. Take off, hoser. This is a stunning record. If you are a bit afraid of world music, this is your way in. Here's the band having, I don't know, shawarma. There's something to do there. This is your way in, and here's how he appears on stage. He wears that full get up on stage, just like his, in the Desert People. Again, if you're a bit afraid of world music and you're not sure how, this is rock music just with an African twist, and the twist is just, it's not major. You don't need to be literate, because God knows I'm not an Afrobeat or anything like that. You just need to enjoy music, and that goes for most of my top 5 actually. If you just give it a chance, I think you'll find something rewarding. So that is my number 1 album of the year, Mdou Mokhtar's Afrique Victime. So join us tomorrow, or the next day or the next day, because whenever I can be bothered, where we'll do the 5 albums that I've only heard digitally this year. Sometimes because of availability, sometimes because it's just been the easiest way for me to hear it. And none of it's been stolen. It's all been paid for, because we don't pirate music here. We support artists. We buy direct from the artists where possible, and we support places like Rough Trade, who support independent artists. So thanks very much for watching. Pop a comment with your 5 physical albums of the year if you want, and love and mercy to you and your friends tonight. Take care.